Good evening and welcome. So I want to get started. This party started, like they say. I just want to remind you that the exits, in case of fire emergency, there's exits at the back and on the sides. And I'm Marta Gomez-Chiarri. I'm one of the Colloquium coordinators with John Taylor, who's sitting down now. And so this colloquium would not have been possible with your participation, you coming here, and the support of all our sponsors. We have a new sponsor that recently joined that illustrious list, and it's the Office of Community, Equity, and Diversity at the University of Rhode Island. So we really want to thank them. I would also like to acknowledge the tremendous passion and inspiration from Mary Parlange and the organizing committee, which is composed of Patrick Bauer, Luann Roth, Pierre Saint-Germain, and Don Spears, Narragansett tribal member. Without further ado, I know you haven't come here to see me, so I would like to introduce Lindsay Montanari, educator supervisor at the Tomaquac Museum and Narragansett tribal member. She will do the land acknowledgement. Thank you.
Asquequasin, Natasuis Lindsay Inglisat, Natasuis Wamasukatan at Naha Higansek, Katavatash Kamachi Nin Yukisak. So what I said there was, hi, my name is Lindsay in English. My name is Wamasukatan, or Loving Sea in the Narragansett language. And thank you for having me here today. If you see me looking at my phone, it's because I'm reading. Today, I was asked to give a land acknowledgement. We stand here today on Narragansett land, but as a Narragansett tribal member myself, I always find it interesting, this concept of a land acknowledgement. Today, a land acknowledgement has become something important. It is important because at one time, all of Rhode Island was Narragansett land. All of the United States was indigenous land. Often, in these moments, we are asked to acknowledge a specific small location. During these times, people ask about the significance or the sacredness of these small and specific land. My answer to those? Land is sacred. Land has and is being stripped from indigenous people. These land acknowledgements are so that we do not forget. The indigenous people here in the United States faced genocide. A genocide that was so strong, so powerful, that we have to remind ourselves to remember that this land did not always belong to the United States. I find it funny, this concept of land acknowledgement, though, because my people did not believe in land ownership. When we speak about this land that is the home to the Narragansetts, when we speak about this land that is the home to the indigenous people of this continent, we take it for granted. We can go to sleep without fear of our villages being burned to the ground, that we won't be forcibly stripped from our homes, and that our children will not be taken against our will. Yes, here in Rhode Island, our indigenous people face that too, not just out west, here in Rhode Island. Narragansett people were displaced as far as Wisconsin and Bermuda. Roger Williams claimed he bought our land not with money, but with love. How could he buy land from people who did not believe that land could be bought? I ask us not only to acknowledge, but to remember. We are still here. Against it all, we are still surviving. Remember us. We remember. Although we have been forced to assimilate, we remember the ways of our ancestors. The Narragansett tribe are indigenous to Rhode Island, and therefore our foodways were sustained by our landscape. Foodways that still sustain us. Our history still practiced, though often under the radar. How many of you eat squash, but don't know that it comes from our word, Ascuda squash? We honor our food, we honor the land that it comes from and the people who cook it. Today, we still continue with these ways, sorry, my arm got a little, with these ways by hunting, foraging, ice fishing, clamming, and gardening. Not only does the food sustain us, but these life ways hold us together, keeping us connected to our loved ones and the earth. Yet too often we are being denied access to these cultural practices. Roads are being closed off with the intentions of keeping us out. Our fish are poisoned from the nuclear power plant, leading to an alarming rate of cancer in our communities. I lost my own grandmother to it. Police officers refusing to acknowledge our hunting and fishing rights. What do you do when a police officer tells you, "Either way, I'm going to take your fish. Even if you take me to court, it won't matter, because by then, your fish will be dead"? Throughout it all, we stand tall and continue. But if no one knows we exist, how can you expect them to help with our plight? Many of us continue to be sustained by the land. Each foodway we maintain a blessing. But it grows harder. They strip our lands of everything sweet, then they cover it with tar and build up gray buildings so high they block the sun. They think nothing about its displacement, pushing away the squirrel and fox and deer, swatting at the birds who come to pick up the trash left out, cutting down our trees and forests and the forest wealth, starving the indigenous people of our lifeways and resources. It's not enough for us to be the only ones remembering. Our foodways are our survivance. Today, I acknowledge that this land was and is Narragansett land. The Narragansett people still live here, that indigenous people still exist, that we exist pursuing food sovereignty in a place that tries to ignore our existence. Remember us. I would like to take this opportunity to sing a song written by my tribal elders that is honoring our ancestors. The words translate to, "Your spirit is washing over me. I know you are in the sky." Kuna shawong kuchi sumao angkumnin nui anggi anaud kisukwat nui anggi anaud kisukwat. Katabatash.
Thank you, Lindsay. I'm happy to be here tonight. My name is Shannon Brawley. I am the Executive Director of the Rhode Island Nursery and Landscape Association, also known as RINLA. I have the honor of introducing our speaker this evening, but before I do so, I've been asked by the organizers to mention the new CCRI interdisciplinary degree between business and departments called Environment, Sustainability, and Management. Oh, sorry. I don't do this very often. This degree has clear transferability to URI and the College of Environment and Life Science. The creation of this degree would not have been accomplished without our partners at the Rhode Island Food Policy Council, Karen Karp and Partners, Green Indian members, URI and CCRI, administrators, faculty, and so many more. I'm proud of the partnership, and I'm grateful to our partners for their time and efforts. This degree and educational pathway is one piece of what has grown out of RINLA's Growing Futures workforce training and educational program to prepare the next generation of Rhode Island's natural resource and agricultural leaders who will help us navigate some of the biggest issues facing our ocean state, from climate change to how we feed our community. If you are interested in learning more about this degree and even more programs, please visit growingfuturesrhodeisland.org. It is my pleasure and my honor to introduce our speaker, who is a beacon of light and inspiration. You are something pretty special. She currently co-directs the strategy and implementation of young farmers' policy campaigns, ensuring we are pursuing and advocating for equity-driven, farmer-centric research policy and programmatic interventions for the National Young Farmers Coalition. She serves as the organizational council member, co-chair of Farming Opportunities and Fair Competition Committee of the National Sustainable Agricultural Coalition. She has previously worked for Food Solutions New England, the U.S. Department of Agriculture, Michigan State University Center for Regional Food Systems, the University of Rhode Island Cooperative Extension, and the Executive Office of Michigan Governor Gretchen Whitmer. She is an alum of Michigan State University and the University of Rhode Island. She's a James Beard Foundation Scholar, the Agriculture, Food, and Human Values Society Innovation Leader, and an emerging leader in food and agriculture. As an Afro-Dominican immigrant, she brings her experiences, her identity to her policy and advocacy activities. Here are some fun facts. I really enjoyed getting to know Vanessa. Here are some fun facts about our speaker. She regularly travels home here to Rhode Island to visit her family. She also visits her dentist and also her hairstylist, as well as she's a huge Alley Donuts and coffee milk fan. And apparently she is the fastest rising student to Colloquium speaker in the history of the Colloquium. I guess it's 5 years it took her to get back here, and we're really proud of that. So please join me in giving a warm welcome to Rhode Island's very own Vanessa Garcia Polanco. It's a pleasure.
Thank you, Shannon.
Amazing. You're amazing.
Thank you. Hello, URI. It's great to be back. Can you entertain me for a second? Rhody, Rhody, Rhody. Thank you. I haven't heard that in a long time. There are not many URI alums outside Rhode Island. I saw one in Washington, D.C., and I almost fainted. I was like, oh my God, it's a URI shirt. So it's really exciting to be back in Rhode Island, and URI. You're seeing URI shirts and URI alums everywhere. So thank you for joining us tonight. So today I want to tell you about the exception and not the norm. If you know me, or if you heard about me, a lot of people introduce me as this magical unicorn, this rising star, this person doing really unique things. And I want to tell you how I got here and all the people and tools that made that possible. But also why it is a problem that in a country with 13% of the population is immigrants, there's only few of us advocating for a sustainable agriculture policy in Washington, D.C., and in our communities locally. Here in the state of Rhode Island, 13% of the population is the immigrant descent. In places like Providence and Rhode Island, the largest Hispanic minority is Dominican, like me. How many Dominicans do you know doing food policy advocacy? Not that many. I can name all of them with one hand. And if there is more, then please show yourselves to me. And it's really important that we talk about these things so we can challenge our assumptions about the food system. So in research, the first thing that you do before you start writing a paper is you present your positionality statement. You tell everyone who you are and all the biases that you're bringing to your research and to your work. And on that spirit, I want you to think about all your identities, all the people that claim you, all the people that you claim who you are, all the communities that you belong. For example, many of us here, we claim to be from Rhode Island, and we claim to belong to the URI community. So I gave you two. Think about the other ones. And in the spirit of transparency, I'm going to tell you exactly who I am. I am Mocana. That's the name of the town that I was born and raised. We have a reputation for being feisty in Dominican Republic. So if there are any Dominicans here, hi. I'm Cibaeña. That is my regional context of what I am in Dominican Republic. It's the equivalent about being from the Midwest in the United States, and I will tell you more about why that later. I'm Dominican, hi. And I'm an immigrant, and that has really shaped how I experience the US food system and how I experience America. I'm a Rhode Islander, and I always never felt I could claim that until I can tell you so many fun facts about Rhode Island that we have like a bingo card in the office of what words most likely everyone to say in every meeting. Mine is Rhode Island. Because Rhode Island this, Rhode Island that. So I'm a Rhode Islander, and obviously my family is here. And I always say, home is where my family is. Most of my family is in Rhode Island. They're watching, hi familia. I'm Afro-Latina. That is a newer term to help us understand how we are racialized, both in the global south and in the global north. I'm young, I'm 26 years old. And I'm the youngest speaker in the colloquium, am I right? Yeah, so there's that. I'm female. I'm not a farmer. It's really important to tell you that I'm not a farmer. I love working with farmers. I love plants. I read plant science books for fun. I'm really into botany and herbalism. I love identifying plants. My friend sends me pictures of plants, asks me to ID, and I don't know the answer. But I'm really into plants. That's something you should know about me. And I have a bachelor's and a master's of science, so my science background is really important to me in the work that I do. So please think about all the identities that you have now that you know mine, and consider those as we walk through this presentation. So as I told you, I was born and raised in the Dominican Republic, and I come from a town called Mocha, like coffee mocha, something like that. I would like to compare it to like being from the Midwest of the Dominican Republic. We grow all the main staples, and most of the chicken is produced in my town in Dominican Republic. And this is a picture of my dad's farm in Dominican Republic. And I know you're probably thinking, oh, she grew up in a farm, it's so cute, a little farm in the Dominican Republic. Please stop thinking that. My dad has a monoculture of lemons and greenhouses, and before that he was growing chickens. And before that, he was a sales manager for DuPont, selling pesticides. So we talk, but not that much. So it's really important that we know that the way I experienced agriculture in the Dominican Republic was not this cute little thing, the way we may think of traditional family farm. It was really hard to break even, really competitive, really monoculture-driven, really market-driven. And both of my sides of my family come from agricultural backgrounds in the Dominican Republic. And as I was saying earlier to some friends, most of my family started migrating here in the 60s. Me and my sister were the last ones to migrate from our entire nuclear family in 2011. So when we migrated here, many things changed. The culture is new, you had to speak a new language. I migrated to North Providence, Rhode Island. And as I told you, most Dominicans live in Providence, Rhode Island. Guess how many Dominicans were in my high school? There was 2 of us. So in that moment, I felt really isolated culturally, and I felt really lost. I cry a lot because migration is painful. We need to acknowledge that, yes, we come here pursuing a better life, and yeah, that pays off, maybe. But it comes with a lot of pain. It comes with a lot of cultural grieving of the things that we lost, and we need to acknowledge that. But through all those things, I was more connected to my family because most of them were here already through the process of migration. We started migrating here in the 60s, and I was the last one, me and my sister, in 2011. So I got to catch up and meet all the cousins that I knew I had, but I had never met. But our food became more important to me. I started connecting more with food because everything changed around me. My culture changed, the language I spoke changed, my family structure changed, or socioeconomic status changed, but food became more important because my grandma was still super picky about everything we bought and how it had to be cooked. Grandmas always are the cornerstone of foodways. And if you met mine, you know she's almost as persistent on her foodways as a good Italian grandma, as all grandmas are. So it took me a long time to be excited about food in a way that allowed me to connect with food as a tool for empowerment. Because for me, food was an act of subjugation. It was related to domesticity. It was related to a woman being in the house cooking for the rest of the family. And yes, there's a lot of beautiful labor that comes with that, and it's a role that we play in the ecosystem. But for me, that was really painful to see that really gender normalized way. That was the only way I could connect to food. I could not grow the food because that was a man's thing. I can only cook it and serve it to others. So it was through my exploration and engagement to the food system that I became more engaged through with the Rhode Island community and with my own civic persona. It's getting a little blurry. Well, those are boots on the ground, in case you cannot tell. Yeah. And this was actually in a URI class that we had to visit a farm. I don't know which one all your classes. But it was a really important thing for me that when I was at URI, the first time I came to URI was actually to Edwards Auditorium for a career exploration day to get more young women in STEM. And at that moment, I thought I wanted to go into social work because everyone in my family is either in psychology or teaching. And then I was like, actually, I'm really excited about agriculture. I'm really excited about natural resources. And that made me decide to come to URI and pursue environmental and natural resource economics with a concentration in food and agriculture. And I did many experiences at URI, but I really want to highlight a few ones that really fermented my passion for food systems. One of them was working at URI Cooperative Extension. URI Cooperative Extension is this part of the university which mandate is to do outreach to residents and to farmers and many other community members to teach them about the resources of the university to change their lives so they can make science-based decision makers related to natural resource management, let that be horticulture, growing your own food, water, or many other things. And for me, those 4 years with URI Cooperative Extension were really formative because it allowed me to learn one specific thing about the Rhode Island food systems, and my mentors there were amazing people, and many of them are here today. And I'll tell you more about that. At the same time, I was having many other experiences. For example, I got to go to Oaxaca, Mexico with Professor Rosario Pisa to learn about a different food system. I also was running a farmers market back in North Providence while I was attending college. And I was also just meeting a lot of farmers. I didn't meet other Dominicans in agriculture in Rhode Island until I was a junior in college. And that's Margarita and Teodolio, who are still farmers in Rhode Island, in Providence. So I'm this young student. I have a great work study. I'm too involved on campus. I was in student government. I was president of a club. And I'm having all these experiences. And at the same time, you feel, that's awesome. And it was so much awesome. I had so much fun as a student here. And obviously, many of the things that I learned can only be possible because of how interconnected and great the Rhode Island food system is. All the things that I got to do as a young immigrant here were only possible because we have invested in to build that infrastructure here in Rhode Island, where food systems is something exciting, something that we're working on all collectively. Like Rhode Island, we have a Rhode Island food strategy. We have a unified Rhode Island Food Policy Council. And many of those things encouraged me to be excited about working in the food system. But at the same time, you know the joke about Rhode Island, we never leave. So I knew I had to leave to get better. So when I was deciding where to go to grad school, I asked all my mentors, where should I go? And everyone said, Michigan State. So I went to Michigan State. And there I had a lot of fun learning about a different kind of agricultural system. Michigan was really different than Rhode Island because Michigan has a lot of diversified operations and also a lot of monocultures. So a lot of different kind of farming compared to what we have in the Northeast. And at the same time, I had learned a lot about Rhode Island and our New England food system, but I knew that I had to get better. I had to understand other kinds of food systems and other food realities so I could open my perspective. Obviously, I had a Dominican perspective and the Rhode Island perspective and New England perspective, but you also had to keep pushing yourself. And I'm really glad that I did that. I got to do my master's with a focus in New American and refugee farmers like me. I got to work with them and farm with them and learn about their motivations to be in the food system that were really similar to my own motivations, finding belonging, finding inclusion, and seeing food as an opportunity to belonging in our civic infrastructure or advocacy around food system. Yeah, and that was fun. It was great. But at the same time, I knew there were other things I wanted to do. So when I was also still at URI, I did 2 internships in Washington, D.C., because I knew that what we were doing was great. We had all these programmatic interventions, all these programs that we were doing, but something that my mentors at URI Cooperative Extension did that was really good is they always involved me in the process of planning. Because I worked with them for 4 years. They treated me like an intern. By the time I graduated, they treated me as a full-time staff, right, B? Yeah. So they were always really good at telling me, well, this money is coming from DC. This money is coming from NIFA, the National Institute of Food and Agriculture. This money is coming from USDA. We need to be applying for this grant so we can do outreach and events. So I knew that there was a really strong federal policy connection that enabled all the things that we were making in Rhode Island to happen. And that was I was really interested in learning more about those procedures. So I ended up doing 2 internships in the department, one in the Department of Agriculture, one in the Department of Interior in Washington, D.C., with the Hispanic Association of Colleges and Universities, which I didn't know existed until a mentor told me about it from the honors program. And this is my plug for the students. You always need to be telling people what you want in life, what you need help on, because they will go out of their way to help you. And if you don't know what you want, they will tell you that you should be doing something. I think I served on my first board. We had to wait until I turned 18 to sign the paperwork because I was 17 when I started, because someone recruited me for that board. I was not planning to serve on the Rhode Island Food Policy Council until someone went out of their way and called me saying, Vanessa, you should apply to be in the Rhode Island Food Policy Council. So in moments like this, when you get redirected to do things, you should follow with them. So after I finished my master's at Michigan State, it was the height of COVID, and I was applying to several jobs in Rhode Island and in Michigan, and DC maybe, because I kind of wanted to stay in Michigan, no offense, Rhode Island, but I was having a really cool time in Michigan. So I was trying to stay in Michigan because I really love the community I have built there. And I applied for National Young Farmers Coalition because I was a member when I was here in Rhode Island. We have a chapter in Rhode Island. We do a lot of field trips, do a lot of potlucks, do events with the Rhode Island Food Policy Council. So when I started, I've always been a person that is really busy, that does a lot of stuff. And when you're writing your thesis, applying for jobs, and there's a pandemic that just broke loose, you are like, what should I be doing with my life? In that moment, I got a job with National Young Farmers Coalition. It allowed me to focus. Like, this is my line. This is what I could be doing now to impact people who are going hungry, who don't know where their next meal is coming from, who are struggling as farmers. So I put all my energy during that first year of the pandemic into working with National Young Farmers Coalition, and many other things also happened. And that led me to become also the fastest track from being a policy coordinator to being co-policy coordinator in 2.5 years. So all those things happen with a lot of hard work, but a lot of those things happen by chance. So those are pictures of me touring the White House and Congress when I was an intern. And in less than 5 years, I become a policy director. These are Sarah and Mike, who are also policy people in DC working on sustainable agriculture. And we were invited by the president for the sign-on ceremony of the Inflation Reduction Act, the biggest, largest bill for climate action and sustainable agriculture has ever passed in the United States. That was 2 weeks ago. And in moments like that, you are like, how did this happen? What are all the tools that allow me to get here? And I want to tell you a little bit about the most important thing. Do not take no for an answer. when you're a young person, you're gonna hear a lot of things. Women don't care, especially in agriculture and in policy. You don't know what you're talking about because I'm young and my experiences don't matter. My experiences do not account for these things. You're too young to be here. That's my favorite because I've always been the youngest person in the room. I still am the youngest person in the room, and that's a problem because I'm 26. There should be someone younger than me now in all those spaces. And obviously, we told you a lot. I am telling you that I'm that exception. I'm this unicorn that happens to be in all these spaces that has been traditionally reserved for white males in agriculture, especially. But I hear a lot of no's. I still hear a lot of no's. I got rejected from 5 fellowships this year. I still hear a lot of no's. But at the same time, you have to keep moving because you need to hold your theory of change close to your heart. And it took me a long time to agree to my theory of change. So when I migrated here, I thought I had to close my Dominican Republic chapter. I thought I need to focus on being a Rhode Islander. I'm going to know all the fun facts about Rhode Island. I'm going to know where all the farmers markets are. I'm going to meet every farmer that I can in Rhode Island. And that was my way to be locally grounded on our food system here. And then when I moved to Michigan, I did the same. And then when I moved to DC, I was doing the same, or like just try to be focused on all the national policies and all the federal advocacy, this thing that we call the Farm Bill. And I was like not paying attention to DR. And thanks to COVID mostly, all the time for reflection and challenging how we work together and all the interconnectedness that emerged out of the pandemic, I actually finally came to terms that it's okay to be all those 3 things. That I can be a Rhode Island lover of the food system while working nationally in DC trying to pass a farm bill that is good for the environment and for farmers, while also being Dominican and supporting Dominican agricultural products. And that took me a long time to wrestle with because people try to box you in. People try to be, you can only do one thing at a time. And yeah, maybe you should do one thing at a time, but it's okay if you bring all your identities to all the spaces you're inhabiting, especially if you are in advocacy. Because at the same time, all those things are happening on the same background. We're all fighting for the same things. Me trying to open a farmer's market in Rhode Island, me trying to support agricultural projects in the Dominican Republic, me trying to get more funding so students can get degrees in agriculture in DC, all those things are happening in the context of the global food system. And all those things are impacting the food system at different levels. So it is okay to show all your identities, all the things that you care about, and do them at the same time. Because at the end, you have to bring your entire authentic self to all the spaces that you are. Because if you don't do that, you are diminishing yourself. And a lot of people are going to try to box you in. Like, you can only do Rhode Island things. Oh, you only a production person. Oh, you only like a farmer's market person. Or you only do this thing, so you can only do that thing. All these things happen, and all these no's that you're going to hear about are going to happen in your journey. Because the personal is political. And people are afraid when you bring all your identities to political spaces and policy and advocacy spaces because you have nuance, you have background, you have intersectionality. They want to box you in as just being one thing. Oh, young farmers only care about climate change. Lie, we care about 10 things as stipulated in our policy pillars. And people are afraid when you bring all your authentic self to our space. And you cannot be afraid of that, because that's your power, and that's what allows you to navigate the food system with authenticity and actually push a food system that represents our values forward. So how do I go here? I skipped to some details. Now I'm going to tell you actually the things that I think impacted me the most, and these are tools. And those tools can be people. Those tools are different things. So I'm going to tell you some of them. I was 21, and I had just been accepted to the Food Solutions New England Network Leadership Institute. And this was my first agricultural training that was really focused on racial equity. And Food Solutions New England has this really cool racial equity challenge in food system that during 21 days, you can reflect on your experience in the food system. Again, what identities do I bring to the food system? I strongly recommend you all do it. And I was doing the training program, and I was in Washington, D.C. at the time, attending a lot of food hearings, food events, and things like that. And I was like, why are they missing this thing? Like, why they're like talking about food and not talking about workers? Or why they're talking about this without talking about that? And it was just sitting there being like, why? Like, you know, as an intern, you sit a lot in the background, a lot of meetings, and you are like, what is going on? So that's a lot of what happens when you are learning your way around. So in the Network Leadership Institute program, you don't have to do a network leadership project or something that you're working on. But I decided, after going through a lot of those meetings and events, they're going to start tweeting, because that's what cool people in DC do. We tweet. And I started tweeting every Friday as a way to force myself to continue that reflection of a racial equity challenge. And I call it Food Justice Friday, because food and Friday both start with F. That was it. And I started doing that, and I have continued it for the last 4 years, or 5 maybe, I don't know, I stopped counting. And that allowed me to build a rapport and build a reputation as a person that was reflective of food systems, and a person that can think critically about the things that she's hearing, especially in policy spaces. And at the same time, there are many other things that people have done. These are some of the ones that actually some of my friends have created. Black Girl Land, being green while black, just seeing her story. There are many online communities, and we have Stash that allows us to have conversations with like-minded people. And this exercise, start just voicing my opinions, was really important to me, because as an English second language person who has an accent, I was really afraid of owning my voice and saying my opinions. Yes, I will always be the kid who raises their hand in a class, but I was not the kind of person who had taught leadership. So starting a hashtag, being in conversation with others was something that allowed me to have and validate that my experiences in the food systems were valid and that it mattered to be heard. And when you start, you don't stop. You become really reflective of who you are and the things that you do. And I was really lucky that I had many great people who, when they found me on Twitter, when they saw what I was doing, were like, you want to come write a blog post for us? I was like, sure, what would you want me to write about? Yeah, anything you want. It's like, okay, here's my family history, or why I care about agriculture. Or why do you think immigrants should be more active in the food systems? Here, I'm going to write it. And many of those things were opportunities that I used to have more critical conversations and reflections about food systems and the role of immigrants, especially in the food systems, in my own positionality in the food system. So if many of you are afraid of voicing your opinions in public, like I am right now, start by writing them down. The internet is a void. You can publish something and no one may read it, or 2,000 people may read it. You never know. But whatever you have to say is valid, and you have a voice that merits to be in the conversations, because your food system experiences are part of the food system, so they need to be validated. So I started doing a lot of more writing, blogging. I got invited to do guest blogs, and to also publish op-eds, which is still one of my favorite things to do, because I just tell people my opinion on things. Yeah. And at the same time, that leads to a certain level of vulnerability. I do storytelling. I did a lot of open mics, just telling stories about agriculture. I did a lot of kind of like TED Talk kind of things, where you just tell a story. There's not really a TED Talk, but you just say a story that you want. And I got really comfortable just saying my story with interviews and in panels. And you are like, I'm just a normal person. I don't have nothing to say in a panel. You do. We all have something to say because we all have life experiences. And you may not hold expertise in something, but you have life experiences that is worth to be shared. And this is probably the one that is more familiar, especially for the young people in the room. I think our generation right now is really excited about sharing the things that we're learning about the food system online, and that's great. I'm not that person. I literally forget to post sometimes for 6 months. And then one day I post everything I ate, I found at the farmer's market. It's a balance. So even just showing people what you are doing that relates to the food system is so comforting. When you don't see people that look like you in agricultural spaces, it's so exciting to follow like 100 Instagram accounts or just brown and black farmers who are farming across the country doing amazing things. So you just documenting what you are doing in the food system, whatever your role may be, is an opportunity to inspire other people and for you to show and assert that you belong in the food system. This is the long one. Okay, so I want you to look at this slide. Do you recognize any of these logos? Sorry, I forgot to include URI. That was obvious. Yeah. So the biggest tool that you have at your disposal are people and networks. So many times you feel like what I'm doing doesn't matter. I'm the only one doing something. That's a lie. There's always going to be people who are doing stuff similar to you. You just have to find them. And it is so hard to find them sometimes. And for me, every one of those groups have a pivotal moment that allowed me to get more engaged in the food system. For example, the NISA conference was in Baltimore. And I was, at the time, interning in DC in the Department of Agriculture. So I got invited with a youth scholarship to go. And that was one of the first spaces where I got to meet the people who are now my colleagues in Washington, D.C. Because that was a community who was interested in sustainable agriculture, interested in racial equity, and interested in just transforming our food systems for the better. Other of these spaces are, like I mentioned, Food Solutions New England, who is a regional convener who brings people from across New England together so we can have common goals for our region. Again, a network of networks of people coming together to define and shape our food system. Other people here, you're going to hear from them later on in the Colloquium, like the Rhode Island Food Policy Council, what is a great venue for people to get engaged locally in different working groups to shape the food system and actually help the government locally on how to advance our food system's priorities. And National Young Farmers Coalition, we are 250,000 affiliates across the country. We have chapters in 50 states. We have a chapter in Rhode Island. So please come check us out if you're interested in just coming to check out some young farmers doing really good practices, or if you just want to come to an amazing potluck in a farm, we will take you. And all those people, you may feel like you are the only one doing these things. But all those people exist, and depending on your interest in the food system, you can find community. You can find people like-minded who want to change the food system. So, and then you get to the advocacy part. So what do I do? I'm sorry to tell you, I just take meetings and send emails like all of you. I just do it in a suit in an office in Washington, D.C. That's it. And advocacy is basically telling people what you feel or where you stand. And that's what I do every day. Every day, I'm emailing a member of Congress, telling them what young farmers think we should be doing on climate change, what we should be doing in labor and immigration, what we should be doing about student loans. It's every day telling people at the Department of Agriculture that we need more support for young farmers and farmers of color. And at the same time, that might sound different, but that we engage in advocacy all the time. When we write a letter, when we make a Facebook post, when we demand something, that's part of advocacy. And you may think, I don't know, I have nothing to advocate for. So usually what I will ask you to do is think of something that is important to you. Like you really care about pumpkin spice latte, for example. I don't know, that was the first thing that came to my mind. And why it's important, because you really like pumpkin spice latte, and as a Rhode Islander, pumpkins are part of your food culture. Let's just go with this. The first time I had pumpkin spice latte, I was in this coffee shop in Rhode Island, and it was super nice, and I felt just so connected to my Rhode Island community. So I really want pumpkin spice latte to be something that allows for us to connect with others, something that we all have in common as Rhode Islanders. So my value here is connection and family and being part of the Rhode Island community. And my issue is that pumpkin spice latte should be the Rhode Island state beverage. Please, no, please. It's coffee milk. We cannot go back. So you see what I did there. So if you think you have nothing that you care about, that you're not willing to fight for, you probably do. I did it for pumpkin spice latte, which I will never do in real life. That was just an example. And coffee milk team, for the record, and iced coffee all the way. But it's really important that when we're advocating, we pick a corner. And I don't want to sound reductionist, but in my experience, when people are really generalists, they miss the mark. You can know everything about the food system, you can know everything about climate change, but you need to pick a corner and get really good at it. Because when you get really good at one of those parts, you get more creative, you get more specific, and you get more impactful. So I have worked all across the food system, but right now I'm in production. And that allows me to be really effective at my job representing young farmers. And that's the way you build leadership. Only when you get really good at something, you can become a leader of that. You can never become a leader by being a mile wide and an inch deep. You can become a leader by being really good at one corner, one part of the food system, one topic, and embracing it. And at the end, we hope that will lead to public service and civic engagement. That picture here with the poinsettias was like the first time I was interning in the Department of Agriculture in Washington, D.C. And that's the podium where the Secretary of Agriculture delivers the big speeches. And when we think about who has power to shape our food system, we think, oh, the President, the Secretary of Agriculture, yeah, sure. And we forget that as ordinary people, we all have agency and power to shape our food system by engaging in food systems governance. And that's joining a Rhode Island Food Policy Council, a working group in the Policy Council, is demanding teams in your town for them to have a farmer's market, is demanding dining services to have the food that you want. So we all have agency and power to shape our food system. And if you bring your leadership and your advocacy, you can get to public service roles that will definitely transform our food system. Something that Shannon forgot to mention, because we just learned about it on Friday, is that I was presidentially appointed to serve in Farm Service Agency for the state of Rhode Island. So I'm going to be shaping how federal money is used in Rhode Island farms. And this is an important reminder that if you get really good at one thing, you can be a leader and a public servant, because at the end, we all just want a greater and better food system that is creating more common good. And at the end, this should be joyful. Students ask me if at some moment in my career, food became alienating or hard. And they're having moments, especially when I was doing my master's, I could not look at a plan without feeling, ugh, or like without thinking about like, too much research, too much writing. So you have to keep a good relationship with food systems in a way that brings you joy. Because at the end, we're doing this to create a better society, but also to energize us as immigrants and refugees in the food system, to keep us grounded and the possibility that there is joy on this work that we're doing. And this slide is left on blank on purpose, because if we gave all the tools that I just told you to all the young people that at 16 moved from another country, or at 16 are involved, are in high school and start getting involved in the food system, this will be full with pictures. And that's the way we change the norm. The norm is that it's only a few people of color, Dominicans, immigrants, working in food policy advocacy. The way we change this slide being empty is by all of us creating the tools so others can use them, and us providing the tools to others. And many of these tools did not come naturally with me. Many of these tools were provided to me by others, even before I knew I needed them. So if you are in a position of power, of mentorship, of supporting others, please consider what you can do so more people are not the exception, but become the norm. Because it's lonely out here, buddies. It's lonely. There's not that many of us. We need more people who are willing to do the work to fight for a better food system with the tools that the system has given us. And that's advocacy, leadership, policy, and voting, and public service. So I ask you today, early, who are you in food systems? So I'm gonna ask you now, who can you become and who you can help others become in the food system? I am Vanessa Garcia Polanco. I am tired of being an exception. I'm tired of being the only person in the room, so my commitment is to the next generation, so more people that look like me and have my values can do the work that I do. I'm not here forever, I'm here for a season, and I'm ready for the next generation to take over. And yeah, I'm only 26, but the next generation should be taking over already, because only like that we can transform our food systems for the better. Thank you so much. Ooh, any water?
Vanessa, that was so inspiring. Thank you so much. This is the time for questions. Both John and I are going to have a microphone, and in the meantime, if you want to start thinking about questions, anybody wants to volunteer and get started, or you want me to get started? Come on. You're here. Any students? Yeah. Okay. Let's get me out there.
Are there any farms that you recommend visiting in Rhode Island for a first-timer?
My opinions do not represent my coalition or the Department of Agriculture. Any farm that brings you joy, that is growing the things that you care about and is growing the way you want, or is doing the things you want, is a farm worth visiting. So I will not. I will get in trouble. I cannot name anyone. So what? No.
Personally,
I can.
not politically.
I love the URI Botanical Gardens and Medicinal Gardens and the URI Farm. I cannot get in trouble for saying that.
That's a great answer. So by the way, anybody else? While you think about questions, I want to mention that we have a picture contest that is associated with the Colloquium that is sponsored by the Rhode Island Food Policy Council. Every week there's a prompt and you can submit pictures. Every week there's a $100 prize, and at the end we'll have a big prize winner, and the pictures will be shown in the last colloquium. So, just in case, if you want to know more about it, you can feel that screen that Vanessa left empty. So, more questions? Anybody?
How did you stay motivated the whole time?
You had to remember that what you are doing will live beyond your lifetime, maybe, kind of life. Like, there are things that I fight for that I will not be impacted by, but I know it's going to impact other people. So I had to remember that this is my role in the food system, and there are many people who don't know to do what I do or will not feel comfortable doing it. So this is my role in the food system, so I need to do it on behalf of others. So that's why it keeps me motivated.
Vanessa, do you have any insights that you can have about the farm bill coming up? Anything that the Young Farmers Coalition really pushed for and you can be proud that is included?
Yes. So as a coalition, we are really excited about land access and tenure. When we survey our farmers constantly, they tell us that land access is the biggest challenge, something that we know pretty well in Rhode Island. Rhode Island has the most expensive farmland in the country. And we only have so many young farmers here, so it's really hard for them to be competitive when buying farms and farmland here, because we have a lot of second home ownership in Rhode Island. And also we are urban, really urban, but also there are rural parts. So in the next farm bill, we're really focusing on land access and tenure. So for the past year, we have been asking USDA and Congress to introduce like a farmland transition program. And actually a month ago, we got $300 million to start a pilot program for land access for farmers. And Rhode Island is going to be applying for that program.
That's awesome. More questions? Anybody?
Can you tell us more about like where your work brought you back to the Dominican? What are you doing there?
Oh, yes. Thank you, Ree. So last year, I got to spend 3 months in Dominican Republic taking care of my grandma. and just being in DR, crying a lot about the things that the life that I wish I had there, and just meeting a lot of my friends moved back to DR after living in the United States and farming in the United States, because they understood that their role was to actually do more food sovereignty projects in the Dominican Republic after everything they learned here. So one of the things that I did last year was to start applying for a lot of grants on behalf of Dominican organizations. I was able to give them a $2,000 grant that I applied through a friend to a friend. And a lot of what I do is just trying to find resources for them. For example, when I was an intern at URI Cooperative Extension, we always have free seeds that Ocean State Job Lot donated to us, and we will donate. And I knew a few years ago that team had donated seeds to Puerto Rico. And I was just like, well, I have some disposable income right now. I can send seeds to Dominican Republic. I cannot buy all those seeds. But maybe Vanessa at URI Cooperative Extension has resources. Her name is also Vanessa. It was really funny in the office. There were two Vanessas. And then I was like, will you send me some seeds to send to Dominican Republic? Yeah, they sent me 5 boxes. It was 12,000 seeds. And I send those seeds to Dominican Republic, and right now they have gone to around, I stopped counting, but we think around like 54 different food sovereignty projects in Dominican Republic, because unfortunately the Dominican government is really under-resourced. So a lot of extension and universities do not have seeds. And during the pandemic, there were no seeds in the island coming in. So it has been really exciting, and I had to send you the pictures, Vanessa. All the people have been telling me they received seeds to my donation to the Dominican Republic.
Anybody else?
I wanted to hear.
Vanessa, thank you. Oh, go ahead. Go ahead. Go ahead.
I was just going to ask. I'd love to hear more about your vision as a policy director, but also the Coalition of Young Farmers' vision. In addition to land access, what do you think are the other key components to bringing in a next generation of farmers and a diverse set of farmers and creating broad access to farming?
Yeah, definitely.
What do you see as the path?
So National Young Farmers Coalition, we are really special because we represent like the youngest of the farmers in the landscape. And also most of our farmers are first generation. They're brown and black, they're queer, and they're doing mostly sustainable practices. Our farmers report 80% as good agricultural practices like regenerative, organic, and so on. So when we ask our members what are the things that they need the most, aside from land access, is that they want us to reimagine an agriculture that serves the public good, and also an agriculture that they feel supported by. Right now, we know that a lot of the safety nets that our farmers have are not adequate for young farmers who have diversified operations. My average farmer grows 30 different crops and livestock. And that sounds really normal to you as New Englanders. For people in the Midwest, that's unthinkable. Like, you're growing 30 different things? How do you put a tractor through that? You don't. So for our folks at Young Farmers, a lot of what we do is just, a lot of the vision that we hold is that we hold this radical future where farmers will get paid pretty well for environmental services, for doing environmental good practices. They will have a good safety net, they will have free child care, no student loans, and they will get paid really fair wages. That's the vision that we hold. What we do every day is to move the needle a little bit. Just asking for more money for conservation programs, asking for programs so our farmers can access land, or access grants and loans so they can buy land and other equipment. So I think as a coalition, it's sometimes really hard in our vision to hold that. We hold that radical vision, but we're never going to introduce bold and radical bills, because we know those will not move alone. What we will do is we will work with a lot of people in the middle who are still progressive and speaking inside agriculture to push the needle a little bit, so every rulemaking, every program, every new law, or every new project that comes out of USDA is adequately serving young farmers. And right now, that's what we have been doing, especially with this new administration. It has been so exciting because every time we tell them this is not working or this needs to change, they're really responsive to that. And now we're getting ready for a farm bill. And a lot of what we're going to do is just that, make sure that we get really good programs that are going to support young farmers. Even if they're not like completely transformative, we will get something that will allow them to improve their conditions so more of those folks can stay in farming and come into farming. It's my belief that a lot of brown and black people are really interested in agriculture. We come from agricultural backgrounds, we want to be connected to the land, we want to fight climate change. And being a farmer with good agricultural practices is the best way to fight climate change, taking care of our land in a good, sustainable way. We just need to give them more resources so they can do that.
Vanessa, thank you very much for a very inspirational talk, and I hope that all the students in the audience will take your words to heart. But I wanted to ask, you had said about Rhode Island being a very urban state, and that there being problems with kind of access to land. What future might there be for urban agriculture and urban farms, and is the coalition working with that at all? Yes, we do. Most of our farmers are actually in urban areas, and the other ones graduate to rural areas after usually being in urban farming for a while. So, for example, in the last Farm Bill, we got the Office of Urban Agriculture at USDA. They're still figuring out things over there because that's a huge cultural transition when they're mostly used to working with big farms in the Midwest who are growing one thing. When you go to an urban farm, it's really tiny, growing a lot of diversified products. But a lot of money and support is coming out to support them and to support projects like that. John was just telling me he applied for one of those research grants last week. I hope you get it, John. But there's a culture shift that we are supporting more food production, and we need to credit COVID for that. We learned a lot of valuable lessons about the food systems during COVID, and a lot of what we are just saying in this is like, all that money that came out of the door during COVID, you need to make sure it's always coming out of the door. Because we realized that having a stronger food system was growing food more locally. With shorter food supply chains, they're more resilient. So a lot of what we are trying to fight for is just all the funding, all the investments that came out during the hard COVID times, because we're still in COVID times, are just part of the next Farm Bill, so we can continue doing those investments to estrange our local and regional food system, and urban is critical to that.
Thank you. I think, unless there's one more question, quick question,
Thanks. We have a local issue here where one of the farms is trying to introduce a large hydroponic tomato farm in a greenhouse. Can you comment on how that fits into the food system now, future maybe?
I know what you're talking about. I believe in our community should decide how they want their food system to look like. If that town or that community doesn't think that's the right food project for them, the way they want to assert food sovereignty, that's disappointing, because I believe food grown locally can only make a community better. But at the same time, we have to respect the agency of every community or to feed themselves the way they want to, because that's one of the cornerstones of food justice. It's not feeding more people with food boxes as we did during the pandemic, or giving more people a SNAP. It's actually giving them the tools and the resources to feed themselves the way they want to. So if they want to grow hydroponics, aquaponics, or just soil-based, and they can have access to land. So at the end, I think the way we support those kinds of initiatives is by remembering that food justice looks different for everyone. And for that can be not in my backyard.
on that note, thank you very much, Vanessa, for a very inspiring talk. And thank you for coming. Gracias. And I hope to see you next week for Sean Sherman.
Yeah.
Because we have a lot of
Yeah.
land farmers that have a lot of land.
Yeah.
We're actually